Today we are going to learn about dividing by powers of 10. Here we go. So just a real quick recap. Let's take the number 2 and 5/10. We know that if we were to multiply this by 10, our decimal point, which is currently here, would move once to the right. So it used to be here, it would move once to the right, giving us 25. Now, when we divide, the opposite will happen. When we divide by 10, our number is going to get 10 times smaller. So our decimal that used to be here between the 2 and the 5 is going to move one to the left. And our answer is 25 hundredths. So everything you know about multiplying by powers of 10, you're going to do the opposite when you're dividing by powers of 10. Let's look at the number 625. And let's divide that by 10. Then we'll divide it by 100, and then we'll divide it by 1,000. See what happens to our decimal. So in 625, we know that the decimal lives right after the ones place. And when we divide by 10, that decimal moves back 1 to the left. So our answer here is 62 and 5/10. When we divide by 100, our original number, 625, is going to be dividing by 100, so we move the decimal twice to the left. So it's going to get smaller by 100 times, giving us 6 and 25 hundredths. Let's divide it by 1,000 now. So our 625 that had a decimal here to begin with, dividing by 1,000. So let's divide by 10, divide by 100, divide by 1,000. Decimal belongs here now, 625 thousandths. Now we know that when we divide any number by 1, it is unchanged. When we divide a number by less than 1, it's actually going to grow. So you can think of dividing by 1/10 as the same as multiplying by 10. So times 10 and divided by 1/10 actually have the same effect on a number. Sometimes it's easier to think of dividing by negative powers in terms of multiplying by their opposite. So the 625 we started with, if I'm going to divide by 1/10, that's going to have the same effect as multiplying by 10, so it will go once to the right. So it creates this empty space that I now have to fill with a 0. So when I divided by 10, I moved 1 to the left. When I divide by 1/10, I move 1 to the right. Dividing by 1/100th actually has the same effect as if you were to multiply by 100. So the 625 we started with, that had a decimal here, that decimal is going to move 1, 2 to the right. Makes it 100 times larger. That decimal will live here. Okay, and if you want to fix your spacing a little bit better, 62,500. Okay, so just remember that decimal started here after the ones position, but it moved 1, 2 to the right. So now we have the 0 in the ones position. Let's divide by 1,000th. And I'm sure you can all guess that dividing by 1,000th is the same as multiplying by 1,000. Has the same effect on your number. So the 625 that we started with is going to have its decimal move 1, 2, 3 times to the right. 1, 2, 3 zeros to fill those blanks. The decimal lives there. It's a whole number, so we don't have to keep it. For those of you doing slightly more advanced type of questions, just remember that 10 can also be written as 10 to the power of 1. 100 can be written as 10 to the power of 2. 1000 can be written as 10 to the power of 3. 1 is 10 to the power of 0. 1/10 could be written as 10 to the power of -1, or in fraction form, 1 over 10. 100th could be written as 10 to the power of -2, or 1 over 100. And 1000th can be written as 10 to the power of -3, or 1 over 1000. So your questions may be dividing by one of these or one of these, but I'll stick to these just for our examples. So if you want to pause and copy that down, that might be a good idea. Let's try 13.4 divided by 10. So the effect that dividing by 10 has on our number is it moves the decimal place one time to the left. Dividing by 10 makes it 10 times smaller. So the decimal that used to be here is now here. 1 34/100ths. 278 divided by 100. The 278 that we started with, whose decimal lived right there, is going to have its decimal move twice to the left, giving us 2 78/100ths. Let's try 56 1/10 divided by 1/10. Now remember, dividing by 1/10 has the same effect as multiplying by 10. So you can rewrite that if you want, if it makes it easier for you. But either way, the number we started with, 56 1/10, is going to have its decimal move one time to the right. So it's going to become 561. Decimal lives there, but we don't need to write it because it's a whole number. Let's try 40/100ths, and let's divide that by 1,000th. And remember, you can write this down if it helps. Dividing by 1,000th is the same thing as multiplying by 1,000. It has the same effect. So let's look at the digits we started with. We had 41/100ths to start with, so the decimal starts there. Dividing by 1,000th, or times 1,000, moves your decimal 3 times to the right. So that third jump here creates an open space. So 1, 2, 3. My decimal lives here, creates a whole number, so I don't need to keep that. 410. Okay, now it's your turn. Okay, pause the video, try these on your own, and then come back and check your answers. Okay, so 487 divided by 100th, my decimal is going to be moving 2 times to the right, because dividing by 100th we know is the same as multiplying by 100. So the decimal that used to live here after the 7 is going to get bumped 1, 2 places. I'm going to fill those places with zeros. So my answer is 48,700. Make sure you get your spacing. Okay, 71 8/10 divided by 1,000. So let's start with our digits. 71 8/10. Dividing by 1,000 makes the decimal move 3 times to the left. 1, 2, and a third. Creates an open space here that I have to fill with a 0. And you should put a 0 to the left of the decimal too if there's no other numbers there. So that gives us 718 10,000ths. 900ths divided by 1/10. Remember, 1/10 Dividing by 1/10 is the same as multiplying by 10. So the effect that this has on our number 9, so our decimal started here, 9/10, I'm going to be moving 1 time to the right. So the decimal gets closer to the 9. Gives us 9/10. 880 divided by 100. So our decimal starts here. Dividing by 100 makes the decimal move twice to the left. 1, 2, lives here. 8 and 80 1/100ths, or 8 and 8/10.